The first 30 seconds of this video reveal why Tetris is not just a simple puzzle game, but a global phenomenon that rewired the human brain, transformed video game history, influenced music, psychology, competition, and even politics, while hiding strange facts, forgotten stories, and unexpected truths that most players never noticed. And by the end of this video, you will understand why a few falling blocks became more powerful than entire game franchises and why Tetris still controls our minds decades later. Tetris looks innocent at first glance because there are no heroes, no villains, no explosions, no epic cutscenes, and no final boss waiting at the end yet. This simplicity is exactly what allowed it to quietly conquer the entire world. Because instead of fighting monsters, the player is fighting chaos itself, constantly organizing disorder into perfect lines while the game speeds up mercilessly, creating a strange mix of calm focus and rising panic that no other retro game ever managed to replicate with such elegance. What makes Tetris fascinating is that it was born in a place and time where video games were not supposed to exist in the way we know them today. Because it was created in the Soviet Union during the Cold War, a period when entertainment software was not designed for profit, which means Tetris did not start as a commercial product but as a mathematical experiment. A simple idea based on geometric shapes called proving that sometimes the most powerful ideas come from curiosity rather than business plans. As Tetris escaped its original environment and slowly made its way across borders, companies began fighting over it like it was a rare artifact, creating legal battles that were more intense than many action games of the era. Because nobody initially knew who truly owned Tetris, and this confusion allowed multiple versions to appear across computers, arcades, and consoles, each one slightly different, turning the game into a living organism that evolved depending on the hardware it touched. The retro versions of Tetris are especially intriguing because they reveal how developers experimented wildly with sound, speed, visuals, and rules, sometimes creating versions that were brutally difficult, sometimes strangely relaxing, and sometimes completely broken. Which means that the Tetris you remember might be very different from the Tetris someone else grew up with, even though the core idea remained exactly the same. One of the most important moments in gaming history happened when Tetris arrived on the Game Boy, because this pairing changed how people viewed portable gaming forever, turning a handheld console into a cultural icon and proving that flashy graphics were not necessary to create addiction-level engagement, since players could lose hours stacking blocks on a tiny monochrome screen without realizing time was passing at all. The genius of Tetris lies in how it hijacks the human brain, because it rewards order, punishes hesitation, and creates a constant feedback loop that pushes players into a state of flow where thinking disappears and instinct takes over. Which is why many players report seeing falling blocks in their dreams after long sessions, a phenomenon so common it became known as the Tetris effect. Retro Tetris also changed how music was used in games because its iconic melodies were repetitive, yet hypnotic, designed not to distract but to synchronize with the player's focus, creating a rhythm that matched the falling blocks, making the experience feel almost meditative at first and then increasingly stressful as the speed increased, which is a brilliant psychological trick hidden behind cheerful chiptune sounds. Unlike most games, Tetris has no real ending, which means there is no victory screen that tells you that you have succeeded, because the game is designed to eventually defeat you no matter how skilled you become, turning every session into a personal challenge rather than a narrative journey, and this endless nature is what allowed it to survive across generations without ever feeling outdated. The competitive side of Tetris emerged long before esports became mainstream, as players began comparing scores, speed, and efficiency, eventually pushing the game beyond its intended limits. Discovering techniques that developers never planned for, including strategies that allow modern players to reach levels once thought impossible, effectively breaking the game and proving that even decades-old code can still be explored and mastered. Retro gaming historians often point out that Tetris influenced countless other games, not by copying its mechanics directly, but by teaching developers that simplicity, clarity, and tight design could be more powerful than complexity, leading to puzzle games, mobile games, and even modern indie titles that follow the same philosophy of easy to learn but nearly impossible to truly master. What makes Tetris even more intriguing is that it adapts perfectly to every platform it touches, from massive arcade cabinets to tiny handheld screens to modern smartphones, because its design is so pure that it does not depend on technology, graphics, or processing power, making it one of the few games that feels timeless regardless of when or where you play it. Many players do not realize that Tetris subtly trains the brain to think ahead, recognize patterns, and make fast decisions under pressure, which is why researchers have studied it for its effects on cognitive skills. stress reduction, and even trauma recovery. Showing that a retro game can have real-world impact far beyond entertainment. The cultural impact of Tetris goes beyond gaming because it became a symbol of a changing world, bridging east and west during a time of political tension. Sneaking into living rooms across the globe and proving that play is a universal language that can connect people regardless of borders, ideologies, or languages. Even today, modern versions of Tetris still rely heavily on the foundation built by those early retro releases. Because changing too much risks breaking the magic. Which is why the core gameplay remains almost untouched. A rare example of a design so perfect that it does not need reinvention, only refinement. When you look back at retro Tetris, it becomes clear that this game did not just change gaming forever by selling millions of copies, but by reshaping how people think about games, teaching the industry that true power lies not in complexity or realism, but in creating an experience that feels instantly understandable, yet endlessly challenging. Tetris is proof that a game does not need characters, storylines, or cinematic moments to be legendary. Because sometimes all it takes is a few falling shapes, a ticking clock, and the irresistible human desire to bring order to chaos, which is why decades later, we are still stacking blocks and chasing that perfect line clear. If you enjoyed this deep dive into retro Tetris and want more content that explores the hidden stories, forgotten facts, and surprising truths behind classic games that shaped the industry, make sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment sharing your first memory of playing Tetris, and share this video with anyone who loves retro gaming, because your support helps keep these legendary stories alive.